when you get to that point and you're like, Jesus, I'm going to be a black belt, it starts to hit a bit differently. And you're like, oh, wow, this is something I've always wanted. I'm going to get this thing. And that can get you in a slightly different place, because then you're getting it. It's real. It is happening right now. And I knew, even though it wasn't explicitly told, I was just told, be at the grading. I was going to go anyway. But it's funny because like Lockie, well, he didn't wink, but Lachlan Giles is like, he's not good at kind of keeping a secret. He's such an honest guy. And he was just like, but you're going to be there, right? I'm like, yeah. Why is that so important for you to know?
Yeah.
Well, no, but please be there. I was like, okay, man.
Ed said the exact same. He reconfirmed about 5 times.
You're going to be there, aren't you?
Yeah. 30th, right? Yeah.
At this time. Yeah. And so it's funny because it's a bit of a tell. But so many other people were grading the day I got my black belt. But then we had to roll for our black belt. So it's like Thiago and Lockie are there and everybody's there. It's like in the CBD gym, like absolutely it all came together. And then there's like a couple hundred people in there. There's probably 200 plus people in there. So you can't all fit on the mat. It's just thronged with people. And it's like, all right, called out all the people. These people are going for their blue, these people for their purple, these for their brown, and these people are going for their black belt. So they're going to be rolling forever. And man, I was actually very lucky. I got to say, I was lucky on my black belt day. There's 2 guys who I definitely would not want to roll to come get me, because they were going for their brown belts, which was Simon Carson and Big Sean. And for those of you who know Sean, he's got like this devil's head tattoo on his chest. And it's got the curled horns. And he looks like...
Sounds like a soft dude.
He looks like Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Right.
And well, we'd always been friends, but there's something around when he was kind of late purple belt coming to brown and I was coming up for black. We were very competitive and we'd had some pretty hard rolls and whatever. I actually really liked the guy, but at that time we weren't on the best of terms. And I was like, oh my God. Big Sean comes to me, I'm dead. But they were grading for their brown belts. So they were going to get rinsed as well. So we're all out there getting rinsed. And man, it was pretty brutal. I actually got pretty badly injured that day. And actually by 2 of my students. They just pulled the mean tactics on me. Like ripped a toe.
Who told them that?
Oh, funny.
Who taught him this kind of savagery?
It's true. Like maybe it's like the sins of the father. The sins of the father revisit the child, but it's flipped. But man, it was low key traumatic, definitely, because you get so exhausted. Like
rolling for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I think it was like 2.5 or 3 hours.
Wow.
And then towards the end, Thiago's like, "Okay, drink break, guys," and I was like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, we're having drinks break. Like every 45 minutes, you get a drink." I was like, "Since when?" We're in the last 45 minutes of this bad boy. I haven't been having any drinks. And he's like, "Oh, you can now." And I was like, "Oh, whenever my drink bottle was on the other side of the mat, I was exhausted. I'm like, I'm not going over there. Let's keep it going." And you're just surviving. Like for me, that was my experience of it. I know different people go through different things for their black belt, but it was a real relief. And then it was also awesome to be there with other people who are getting their black belts. So there's a camaraderie, I think. If you're at a big enough gym, you remember who you got your blue belt with, but you kind of always remember who you were standing up next to, like who also went through the suffering. There's a camaraderie in that. Yeah. So even though I don't love it, there was a good value in that. And yeah, man, it was special.
Tell me about the achievement, sort of less so than the actual event, but the feelings around that. The days following.
Yeah,
moment.
It was happy. In the moment, it was incredibly happy because it's something I put so much of my life into. So I cared a lot. Like I cared more about that thing than pretty much anything else. There's very few objects I care about. It's like my journal, my diary, whatever, my memento mori coin, and yeah, probably my black belt. That's it. Like I don't care for objects, but I could look at it and know what it represented for me, and that was important. And when I look around at other people with their black belts, I don't know their journey, but I'm just like, yeah, man, it means a lot, doesn't it? And there's a knowing in the foundation, the work, the sweat, the suffering, the obstacles to have that thing. It's pretty special. How about you, Joe? Talk to me about getting the strap.
So Yeah, the grading itself was a lot less. You know, you were there, right? It was a smaller deal. It was a bit more organic. I was.
It was meant to be a surprise.
Yeah. I was pretty certain I was getting it, especially once Misa and my son and Hattie kids showed up. I was like, all right, it's happening. But yeah, I mean, and I've spoken about it on other episodes, but I'll quickly recap it. It was for me. I actually like my energy went down. I was sitting there as Ads is making the speech, and he did a good job. He was talking about getting his black belt and how special it was to him.
Right.
And then his segue was going to be, and I hope this guy feels the same way about, But so I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I think I'm getting my black belt now. I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting it. And I remember having this like elation, and I'm sitting there and I'm just trying to look cool. Right?
Beat you.
Yeah. You're like,
act natural.
You're like, you have to go out there in a second, just be cool. And then I remember he's like, Joe black belt, and everyone does the thing. And I got up and I was like, so fatigued. I'm like, oh man, I'm so, I felt like I just went down somehow. And it almost like, then he put it on me, and then I said some words. And I even think back and I'm like, what the f- did I say? Right. I'm like, I don't think it was as profound as I had envisioned it would be.
Yeah.
I consider myself a good speaker, but I've always reflected on that and be like, I think I just said some stupid shit. And I'm like, man, it was almost out of body.
It's heavy in the moment, right?
It is. It really is. And so it was not at all what I expected it to be. Because like I've said, I thought it would have been really celebratory for me, and that I would have been like super frothy about it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. In the days following for me, it was actually like I was like, there's no way I wasn't stoked about it. Sure. I was at like the we're having drinks afterwards and stuff.
Yeah, we had the kind of Christmas party.
Yeah, and I was like, nice. I think I don't know, was I wearing it? But I was just like, yeah, this is sick. Like I was having a really good time. But there was also like a weight to it. And I think that what that was is that at that time, I didn't match up to what my expectations of a black belt were.
Oh, okay.
And I think that that's just to do with who I am, but also my journey with jiu-jitsu and that timing, which was coming back from the knee surgery. And there's just parts of my jiu-jitsu that I didn't rate, and that I still don't think are that great, right? So for me, it was almost like this. You'd looked at black belts as a lower belt forever and thought, man, when I get there, I'm going to know the whole game back to front. I'm going to be a master of jiu-jitsu.
I have my game together.
Yeah, everything. And I'll know all positions, and I'll be able to, and I was so far from that in my mind.
Right.
And of course, I now recognize that is actually, like, you never truly, some people do, but most people never really get to that. You never truly master it. That's the game, right?
Yeah.
You become really good at certain things, but the game evolves, and there's this constant process. So in a way, we're all kind of doing it together, irrespective of which belt you're at. But I'd always thought like, wow, this is how I will see myself when I'm a black belt. And then when I got there, I'm like, I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
So that was surprising, and whatever, great, humbling, right? That is kind of how I would describe the sense of achievement for me at the time.
Interesting. Because I was going to say the next step in this process of getting the black belt, the thing that people don't tell you, is the slump. It's the post black belt slump, which is, oh no, I'm a black belt now. Dang. Everybody is coming for you. The expectation is what you're doing. Like you're an adult now. You're all grown up. Yeah. You're a black belt. You better get your shit together, because every belt below you, they're going to ask you questions, but they're also going to try and rip you. And they're going to, and other black belts are like, oh, you're a black belt. Cool. Let's test that. It's very interesting. I actually found that probably for a month or two after I got it, it wasn't imposter syndrome, but I didn't feel like I was a really good black belt.